This video is sponsored by Denk Nutrition, essential nutrients for your health.
My name is Nanama Riafe, a medical doctor. I have 2 children, a 4-year-old who is a girl and then an almost 2-year-old who is a boy. I got pregnant, I think about 2 months after marriage, but it was an embryonic gestation, so like a missed abortion, blighted ovum. So after 10 weeks, I had to get an EOU done, and then, and it took about 4 to 5 months before my cycle stabilized. There are a million things that could go wrong in the pregnancy. So you might have, for every normal pregnancy in the womb, you have a sac and then you have the fetus. So you have the sac forming, but actually no baby will form in the sac. So if you do a pregnancy test, it will be positive. It will continue to be positive, but then there will be no baby there. And so that's what happened. So I did a pregnancy test. I took the first scan about 6 weeks. There was a gestational sac, but there was no fetus. There was no fetal pole. So, and then the usual medical advice will be wait for about a week or 2 and then repeat the scan. And then I did that and it was still the same thing. And then the third time, which was about 10 weeks by then, and we realized that it was a missed abortion. And that's another term for it. I think I must have cried every single day for about close to 2 weeks. Because when I first found out I was pregnant, it was exciting. I couldn't wait. I already joined a birth club online and reading discussions. I would have expected that baby in November of that year, 2015. So it was exciting. So doing the first scan, realizing that there was no fetal pole. As a medical doctor, I knew there should have been a fetal pole by then. So a lot of things were running through my mind. But until actually I started spotting or bleeding, and then I realized that it wasn't normal. And so that made me sad. It must have taken about a month or 2 to get over it. The crying did stop, but then the emotional stress didn't. I think maybe what actually made me get over it completely was when the second pregnancy came along, and that one was fairly normal. Our pool of therapists in Ghana are not so many. But he was a psychiatrist, so I spoke to him, and he used to send me messages once in a while, call, find out how I was doing. That was number one. Of course, the important thing was that my husband was very supportive, and he would always go on with it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you are alive, you are healthy, and we are still here, so it can happen again. And then my friends, I don't have many friends, but I have a circle of friends that I can share things like this with. And then my mom, I always forget my mom. She's my biggest support system, actually. So she actually came to Kumasi to come and see me that week, and then prayed with me. I think she stayed overnight. And then, so that's it, the support system, yeah. That's a good question. And to be honest, I haven't thought about it like that. But I wasn't afraid to get pregnant again. Some of my friends tell me that they probably think I'm a lot stronger when it comes to things like this. Maybe. Because even though I was sad, like I said, I anxiously did want another pregnancy. So I worked at it. We both worked at it. So I wasn't afraid to get pregnant again, no. Except, of course, when the second pregnancy did happen, I had a little spotting in the first week, and it made me anxious and scared. What if it's happening all over again? But then when I took the ultrasound and I realized that this is definitely not the same as the previous pregnancy, things were much better. So mentally, how did I prepare? I have a support system. Okay, it's good to, we grow up in a culture where sometimes we're told that you shouldn't share your marital problems with others, especially your friends. But when you have good friends, people you can trust in, sometimes just by listening to you or being there for you to cry, that alone is some form of healing. And of course, if your faith in God is strong, that's important, because sometimes God finds a way of healing us even without us knowing. And don't stop trying. If that's what you really want, no situation is the same. No two pregnancies are actually ever the same. So just because it's happened once or twice or sometimes even 3 times doesn't mean that the next one will be the same. Things will definitely change. It's a little difficult for me to look back and think about what I enjoyed. But of course, it brought my husband and I closer. Because we were both excited to meet the little girl that will come out of it. And the favors, when you walk around with a pregnant tummy, things are done for you automatically. People are actually more gentlemen and ladylike than we think in this country. People are doing you extra favors all the time. And then I got my husband to wait on me hand and foot. So that was fun. He could drive 45 minutes just to go and get me Kele Wele or something. And more than 45 minutes actually. Number 1, nausea and vomiting. I was actually admitted because, like I said, nothing was going down. So for hyperemesis or like excessive vomiting. And maybe towards the 3rd trimester, because you are obviously carrying a load, I started having this waddling gait. My friends were making fun of me at work all the time. You walk like a duck. And so yeah, other than that, that's my top, the nausea and the vomiting for me, and then no food going down. Yeah, I went to work actually on Thursday. She's a Friday born. I did my ultrasounds. I'm in radiology, so I did my ultrasound scans for the most part of the day. I was on my feet almost the entire time. And then I was exceptionally tired that day. I didn't notice it till later in the night. Then around just a few minutes to midnight, I realized that I was losing liquor, or my water had broken. So I woke up and I realized that the bed was wet. I thought I had peed myself, because in the 3rd trimester, you have some few issues of incontinence with urine. So I went to pee actually, and as I got up, there was another gush. So then I realized that it was liquor, it wasn't urine. Yeah. So that's how labor started for number 1. Well, ultimately, it ended up in a cesarean section, but labor was painful. I had scheduled an epidural with an anesthesiologist. So we got to the hospital, I think around 1 a.m. It took some time for my husband to wake up. He wanted me to sleep on it, but the pain was quite unbearable, and the liquor kept gushing out. So when we got there, it was like excessive cramps. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, if you put cramps at maybe 4, this one was like about 8 of that pain, 8 to 9. It was quite painful, but I could endure it at that time up till about 5 a.m. And then I was like, no, this is getting worse. And then the timing was also getting shorter. Initially, they were about 5 to 6 minutes apart, but now it's like almost every 2 minutes it was coming. So I called the anesthesiologist And then he came and he said, oh, I'm told you are just 2 cm dilated, so we can get the epidural going. So he did it, and then that was it. I was pain-free until eventually we went for CS. The epidural was very nice. It worked really, really well. Instant love for number one. Because when they first took her out, and then they showed her to me, what they do is open the legs to make sure that, is this the baby you are looking for? I said, yes, it's a girl. And they said, okay, so we are weighing her, we are cleaning her up. So by the time they were done, the obstetrician was also done closing me up. So as I was pushed into my room, and then they brought her in, and then put her on my chest, it was instant bonding, actually. It wasn't so for number two, because I was in a lot of pain for him. I didn't do an epidural before labor set in. Sorry, I didn't do an epidural after labor. And it was rush to get the CS done because his heart rate was starting to decelerate. So I was in a lot of pain, actually. So when they first brought him, initially I wasn't able to handle him very well. But I think after about 4 hours, after I slept and woke up, and they brought him to me, then I realized what a beautiful boy he was. Actually, he really is beautiful, and then we bonded. But for my girl, it was instant. In that moment, I forgot about all the nausea and vomiting she had caused me the 9 months. All of it, all the pain, the stress in those 9 months, everything just disappeared, honestly. I had a difficult time breastfeeding the first one. So when we left the hospital, she was crying. She'd been crying for every single day, for all the 3 days that we were there in the hospital. She'd cry and cry. And the breast milk was just not coming. She wasn't latching properly. I was struggling. She was struggling. So I was actually dreading that drive back home. Because she kept on crying, and she cried and cried that whole day. So and I was determined not to give her formula because we had to do the exclusive. Unfortunately, we couldn't. So by the time we got home, I think because of the drive, she slept, and she slept for some few hours. But that night, nobody had any sleep in the house. She cried and cried and cried. For number two, things were a little easier. Even though we had some problems with getting him to latch and breastfeed, ultimately he was a little more calmer than she was. I think she was just hungry. Because we had issues with breastfeeding, I still didn't want to give her formula. So I used to express with the electric pump. So anybody who knew me in the first 3 months, I was always sitting by the breast pump. So I will pump, either I will feed her, or my mom will feed her, or my husband will feed her. And it was still not enough. So by the time she was almost 3 months, I realized I couldn't do anymore. No, actually it was less than that. She was just about 2 months or so. And then I introduced the formula because she was always hungry. Yes, but for the boy, it was easier. I had a lactational consultant, so I sat in her office with him. She helped me a lot, and by the time we left, he had latched. He had learned to latch, actually, and from then it was just smooth. So for him, I was able to do exclusively till I started work. It wasn't for 6 months, but until I started work, he wasn't taking formula. So for the girl, I don't think we had many problems as a baby. My mom helped me a lot, really did. So the peculiar thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact that I left her with my mother when she was, I think 6 months. It's a difficult thing for mothers to do. I was working in Kumasi, my mom was in Accra, and I didn't have as much help in Kumasi as I wanted. So when I had to resume work, I left her with my mom. In the first week, I wasn't ready for work. I just had to go because I had to resume. So that week, and I knew I would come back to Accra the following weekend. So I think emotionally, it didn't sink in then. So when I came to work, everything was okay. I missed her, of course, very much. And then people started asking, where is she? You left her in Accra. How can you do that? Don't you miss her? You know, all those things. So I think all those pressures started getting to me. So when I went back to Accra that weekend, and I actually packed my things, knowing that I'm actually leaving here. And that's when it sank in. So that Sunday, I remember I was sitting in the bus, VIP bus, waiting to leave Accra. And then all of a sudden, I just started crying. I must have cried my eyes out. The man who was sitting next to me, he didn't say anything until I calmed down, like stop crying. And then he says, oh, mommy, ade, ukunu ejaiwana. And I was like, Pacho Debbie. Then he said, Vivie ni I sonya mede. And then out of nowhere. And I said, okay. So I calmed down. But of course, by the time I got back to Kumasi, the waterworks started again. I cried. And that week was actually the week that the breast milk stopped. So I think the stress, work, everything got to me. But is it a sacrifice that I will make again? Yes. Because I couldn't trust nannies then, to be honest. I had to find one that I trusted enough to leave my baby with to go to work. But here's my mom, who had closed down her shop when I became pregnant, so she can help me. She was willing to take her, no questions asked. And she gave off everything, 100%, to take care of the baby. So I knew she was safe. So it wasn't actually difficult after I realized how good she was doing with my mother. And then obviously I had the time to come back to Accra almost every weekend, except when I was on weekend duty. And every time I came, she would be by the gate waiting for me because she knew that Friday night Mama would be coming. And so the moment she sees me, the smile on her face, it was worth it. Actually, maybe it was some sort of comfort for having to leave her. So for 6 months to 1 year, she was with my mom, except when I was on leave and I come, or when my mom had some days off and she could come and live with me in Kumasi for a few days. But it was worth it. So if you are pushed to the wall, like I think I was, and you have to live with your baby with somebody you trust, in my case, my mom, you shouldn't really listen to what people have to say, because people at work were starting to get to me, actually. How can you leave her? And then one friend, I remember a friend telling me, Chale uni bibi, I think some of them are just jealous that your mom has time to devote to her like that. So some of them wish their mothers were living with them like that. So don't worry about it. Her BCG was tough because first of all she was hungry and then she was in pain. So I cried along with her. That's penta vaccine that they take at 6, 10, and 14 weeks. At 6, it wasn't so bad. She took it and then she slept. But it's like as she grew older, she was recognizing pain more. So the 10 weeks was tougher, the 14 was tougher. But ultimately, she did better compared to most babies. The boy, not so much. He loves his skin. So every immunization was a struggle. Every immunization. And as he grew older, he realized what was about to happen. So he would clutch onto you very tightly. And once the injection got in, he could cry for like 2 hours and he's still crying. Even with the syrup Pimo or sometimes even Brufen, and he would still cry. Okay, actually, where I had him, they don't do much of circumcision. There's a lot of paperwork involved and all that. But he didn't cry much. They gave him a little anesthesia, like topical anesthesia. But as he was growing older, I realized they didn't take much of the foreskin as they were supposed to. So I asked the pediatrician, and she said, oh, that's what is done here. So you have to keep retracting it, and as he grows older, it will pull back. But that didn't sound right to me medically. So when I came back to my own pediatric surgeon, who is a friend here, I showed it to him, and he said, no, you need to take it off if you want it circumcised properly. And that was around 3 months. So that was a lot of hell for him, actually. He cried. That was circumcision number 2 at 3 months. It was so unfair, but it had to be done. So he cried a lot. He was in pain. He didn't sleep that night, I remember, and he even had a temperature, because circumcision at 3 months is not easy. He really did cry. And it took about 3 or 4 days for him to calm down and get back to his normal routine. But after that, he was okay. So for the girl, she started solids around before she turned 5 months, because she was already taking formula. And anytime you were eating, she would be staring at you like, "Ntiwo mommy be." So she started. Unfortunately, both of them don't like food very much. You have to force them to eat. So we started with the usual baby foods, mashed potatoes. We started with cocoa porridge, normal corn porridge for her. It was going well with her formula initially. Then around 6-7 months, she just stopped. She didn't want it anymore. So we started with mashed potatoes, mashed avocado. Sometimes we make spaghetti, like my mom will make spaghetti and sauce and then blend it. She liked that too. So because she was a fussy eater, you tend to try a lot of things. Almost everything you think of. Blended pureed carrots with peas and then meat. Sometimes even yam. And then when you are feeding, like when you are eating, you try to see if she will eat some too. The boy was eating well. He started solids just before he turned 6 months. He was eating well. He didn't like cocoa much, so he really didn't have a lot of cocoa, like the porridge. So he was more of the pureed foods, sweet potatoes and beef, and he didn't like vegetables too. But now he does. Now he actually eats salad like an adult. So yeah, mostly it was what the house was having, the meals that the house was having, and you try to puree it for them or cut it into pieces for them. And the girl also liked fufu and soup with a little okra. That one, she loves it. But unfortunately, now that she's almost 4, she hates fufu. But she loves banku and okra. She does. The boy loves yam, boiled yam and stew, because he likes to munch on the yam. And he likes apim and stew as well. So anything he can munch on. Even as a medical, let's say in pregnancy, I mean, you hear that if you talk to them, they hear it, but you don't really you don't think it's true until you experience it. So I was a chorister then when I got pregnant with my girl. So I realized she loved the classical music. She did. Anytime I went for choir practice and we sang, there was this particular lady, Edith. She has the most angelic voice. Anytime Edith sang a solo, she would just calm down. So I started singing to her. And she actually did respond, because sometimes you felt a kick. And then, yes. So when you talk to them, they really do hear you inside there. Surprises, I didn't think we would have a lot of problem with breastfeeding as I did. Especially for her. Because I didn't have access to a lactational nurse then. So breastfeeding, I thought breastfeeding comes naturally. Nobody tells you that you have to struggle and struggle and struggle. Even at 2 months, you are still struggling. Oh no. Does anybody really know what they are doing? No. But there was something my husband said once when Effie was a baby, and he said, I mean, your baby is peculiar to you, so whatever you are doing must be right for her or him. There's unsolicited advice. People will tell you all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, is the baby healthy? Yes. Is the baby safe? Yes. Is he growing well? Yes. Then whatever it is you are doing is working. I don't really think there's anything like right. Of course, the common things are common. I mean, keep electricals away from the babies, and those ones are safety protocols. But as far as you are concerned, it's your child, so you know best. But if you know what you are doing, nobody can really say they know what they are doing. Oh, yes. I have gone from UK 12 to UK 18 after 2 pregnancies. Well, in my case, it's basically my fault because I ate a lot. Because I can't eat during my pregnancies. Once the baby comes, every food that I couldn't have before, I have to have it. So I gained a lot of weight postpartum. Took me some time to lose some of it for her before I got pregnant with him. But with him, I'm struggling very, very hard to lose the weight. So yes, your body change. You don't lose there's some belly fat that no matter what you do, it doesn't go away. Some of it is good though, the kind of fat that is in the right places. But other than that, I love my sleep, but I haven't had a good sleep in God knows how long. Maybe in the times when they are with my mom, in the months when they are with my mom, I'm able to sleep well. But when they first come, that sleep deprivation can actually drive you into postpartum depression, So it's good to have a lot of help. But my sleep, that's number 1. Number 2, takes forever to get ready to go somewhere. That's very life-changing because initially you were a single girl. Even if you were married, it was still just you. You could just get up, pick your bag, put on your makeup. Now I barely even put on makeup because I will spend so much time chasing, especially the boy, that by the time you are done, it will all just be running on your face. So that's also life-changing. And every decision you make now, they are your priority. If it's work, school, everything, it's like every decision you are making has their best interests at heart. Even if it involves you primarily, it's still them. So that's quite life-altering. I don't think there were much scary moments with her. But for him, I dropped him once. I was asleep, he was on my lap. The next thing I heard was "kum." I was tired, and my mom just tapped me. Hey, what man before more? I mean, the moment I picked him up, I just checked, palpated his abdomen, checked is anything wrong, checked his head, checked his pupils, everything, but he was fine. It was fine. My dad has this theory that most of the time the angels lie down for the kids before they fall, so he was fine. I think that's the scariest, when he was a baby. But not much. Leaving them, that was one. That one is quite important to me because for her, when she came back to me, there were some things I had to correct because obviously she's with grandma, so grandma lets her have her way. She wasn't sleeping early. So when she came back to me in Kumasi, I had to correct some of those things. And for the boy as well, a little bit. So leaving them, that's very challenging. And of course, financial issues too, because babies come with a lot of costs. So that's also quite challenging. Some of the costs we incur on ourselves, like women like this. My girl, I bought so many clothes for her, so many. Some I ended up selling. I sold quite a lot of her clothes. So financial issues were also a problem, especially when the second one came around because I had a lot of bills to pay for him. So yeah. Thank you, Mama. You are the best. I think that statement is rare from my girl. But once in a while, when you do something for her, I think she herself is just amazed, and she will just say, "Thank you, Mama. You are the best." Statements like that, I mean, it gets to you. No matter how hard you are, you just soften. And I see how smart they are growing. We as parents, we all like to believe our children are smart, but I put a lot of work into getting Effie to articulate properly, speak good English, because I don't like the way some of the Ghanaian kids speak, especially English, especially like with grammar. And so when I hear how she speaks, she still makes some mistakes. When I hear how she speaks and how people commend her and how articulate she is at her age, I feel proud. I do. Because I invest a lot there. Boys are a little slow in terms of development. So he is now picking up on words. But when she was nearly 2, she was already forming good sentences on her own. So that's rewarding.
This video was brought to you by Denk Nutrition, because health is more than just the absence of disease.